Welcome back to another episode of the Skinfluence Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dustin Portela, board-certified dermatologist, and I'm excited to welcome on to the podcast today Dr. Usama Syde. He's also a board-certified dermatologist, but he has also developed an online telehealth platform called Future Clinic. Future Clinic is designed to help get patients back to having a personal relationship with their doctor. I do have a Future Clinic, and you can access care directly from me right now if you live in the state of Idaho, Utah, or New York. But I will be getting more state licenses and offering actual healthcare through the web to more patients in more states. Dr. Syde developed Future Clinic after seeing the problems in the healthcare space. This platform can empower doctors, give patients more autonomy, and reconnect you to have a personal relationship with your doctor. You're going to learn all about the platform, why it was started, and that there are many specialties that you can get care from on Future Clinic. So we will welcome to the podcast, Dr. Syde.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Portela. I'm excited to have one of our conversations on a recording.
Yeah. We've been talking quite a bit over the last few months, and you have really launched something that I think is going to be quite disruptive in the healthcare space, and that is the telehealth platform called Future Clinic. People have probably seen it on my content. If they're following you, obviously, you've been pushing it quite hard. And this really gets to, I think, a good place in medicine, and that is getting people back to having a personal relationship with their doctor. And I want to talk about that in your perspective on having a personal relationship with your doctor and how a platform like Future Clinic gets us back to what medicine kind of was supposed to be, but in a modern age.
Yeah, great question there, Justin. And this is something which I've been thinking about for many, many years now, because I think the version of healthcare and the version of being a doctor that I saw my dad going through, which was, not even that long ago, 20, 30 years ago as I was growing up, seems so different to what it is right now. Like back then, it was still quite normal, this idea that you'd have one specific doctor who you go to see and who you build long-term relationships with. And then for the doctor themselves as well, that was how they built these relationships with their patients. That was one of the most satisfying parts of your job, was that you would keep seeing the same people over and over again. You would get to know them over time. And in that sense, you just had this like really trusting foundation, which is so critical whenever you're trying to make a healthcare decision. Because if you don't have that trust automatically there across years and years, then every single consultation, you're kind of starting from a negative, because you're having to build that trust and then get them to take your recommendation seriously. And so that's always how I pictured healthcare being. And then when I went through my training myself, and for context, I did my medical school in Imperial College in London, but I did my residency training at Mount Sinai in New York, and I've been in private practice for a couple of years since then in New York. And increasingly what I saw from not just dermatology, but from other specialties, is that we're moving towards this like really fragmented, interchangeable relationship when it comes to people's doctors and the patients themselves. We often even call it providers now, right? Like, because it's become this kind of like interchangeable client relationship. And when I look at it, I just think we're missing a lot there, because I think that's part of the reason why we now have trust at an all-time low between doctors and patients, because every time they go in, they're seeing someone totally different. They book an appointment with one person by name, and when they turn up, there's actually a different person there, and they're just told that like, yeah, we moved you over here because that doctor's not there. And patients are supposed to be okay with that, and doctors are supposed to be okay with the idea that there's this interchangeable relationship. And a part of me just thought, listen, like, why did we get rid of that other model? Like, was it because it was somehow not leading to good outcomes? Is that what it was? People didn't want continuity? I don't think that's what it is, because when I speak to doctors, they value it. When I speak to patients, they value it. And really what it is the system itself has pushed us all in this direction, where we're supposed to be these interchangeable cogs in this big healthcare machine. And I think that big healthcare machine is just something that I'm trying to rally against with Future Clinic. Like, I'm trying to get to a situation where it's as simple as a patient picks a doctor who they trust, that doctor and that patient talk directly, and that's how you get your healthcare. And it feels really obvious, but yeah.
Right, you're right. It does feel obvious. And I think you highlighted a couple really important things, is that as we have seen the corporatization of medicine, where large insurance companies now own doctors, where multi-specialty groups own doctors, private equity groups own doctors, they are treated like widgets that are interchangeable. And we think that there's not the art of medicine, that it's all just science, and that we can plug and play any provider in the spot and expect that patients are always going to get the same level of care. But there's been plenty of studies in medicine where we know that patients feel more comfortable with a doctor who is similar to them in many ways, whether that's the race or ethnicity of the doctor, whether that's just a long-term relationship, whether that's the doctor that took care of their parents and maybe even their grandparents. I love hearing those stories where this doctor delivered the patient and he's still their family doctor 20, 30 years down the road. And the corporatization of medicine has really stripped a lot of that away. And it does take away that fundamental element of trust between a patient and the physician. And I believe that that trust is really important to having better outcomes in healthcare, because the doctor can tell you and you actually believe what they're saying because they haven't steered you wrong. But when you plug and play any provider in there, now the patient has to reevaluate the fundamental trust of that relationship with every single interaction. So I really like the direction that you're heading with Future Clinic, and it does seem to be an obvious answer to the corporatization of medicine. And you've really taken that into the modern healthcare atmosphere where everybody is online. We're on our phones all of the time. And you've started this through Future Clinic with the implementation of AI, which is, I think, very smart because it's coming whether we like it or not. But you have found a way to use chat as a delivery care mechanism while maintaining that personal relationship with the doctor, and kind of identified things don't always have to be in person, but you can still have a personal relationship with a physician. And I'd love to hear about the approach of using chat, using AI, and then bringing the doctor into that conversation as well.
Yeah, would love to talk more about that. So yeah, Dustin, for me, when it comes to chat, because I'm from a very global family, like, my parents live in Abu Dhabi, I have a brother in Toronto, I have another brother who live in Pakistan right now, and I myself here in New York. When I think about how my relationships have evolved in the last 5 to 10 years, like, there are people who I feel like are intimate parts of my day-to-day life who I haven't met in person for years. So like, when I think about when's the last time I saw them in person, I can't believe that it's been like 5 years since I've seen certain people, because they are so present for me, because they're in a group chat with me or because we're WhatsApping all the time. And so I think there is this concept of just like a digital intimacy where you can have a very real connection with people. And we've all experienced it, whether it's with friends from high school or whether it's with family members. You really can build that connection over chat. It's not the case that it always has to be some like robotic, distant, kind of relationship. And in a lot of ways, it becomes so easy to embed in your life that it actually is the best conduit for maintaining close relationships with people, is having it be asynchronous and being chat-based. Because if I ask people, when's the last time you scheduled a call with your high school friend to catch up on something, that suddenly feels like so much more work, right? Like, you're like, oh, now I have to arrange it. Now I have to look at my calendar. Now I have to make sure that I have like this allotted time. Whereas chat is so beautiful because it works on your own schedule, and then it also works on the other person's own schedule. Like, you don't need to have like kind of a permission or pre-agreement of when this conversation is going to happen. It can just continue to happen in a very natural way. And so I've always found chat to be this really underutilized care format for that reason. The other thing is, telehealth came with a lot of promise in the last 5 to 10 years, traditional telehealth with video visits. And yet doctors really hate telehealth. And I think a lot of patients quite like it, but I know doctors especially really don't like it. And part of the reason why we don't like it is because, video calls are kind of exhausting, right? Like, when you have back-to-back video calls throughout a day, if anyone's been through 10, 15 calls back-to-back in a day, like, by the end of that day, you're not a happy person. You're not a great version of yourself when you've had to be, regimented in that kind of style. And then there's technical problems and there's poor connection, and then people's webcams don't work, or whatever it might be. And so I was always kind of jaded by this idea that, telehealth came with all of this promise of continual, more convenient types of healthcare, but no one really took to it because it had so much friction associated with it. And on the patient side too, you have to be in a quiet room. You have to make sure that you don't have, your kids running around screaming in the background, or you're at work. And so that amount of friction was enough, I think, to make telehealth kind of a bit of a disappointment of a care model. Whereas I think chat-based care, when it's asynchronous, has all of that same promise of convenience, easy access, embedding into your life, with none of those other downsides that come with something like a video visit. So that's why I'm really passionate about chat. And then the next question of how do we embed AI into this? I think that's a really, really tricky question as well, because what I knew for sure was we have to use new technology to make this care model more scalable. Otherwise, what's going to happen is what's happened with traditional concierge medicine, right? Like, right now, celebrities and billionaires, they already have personal doctors that they message. Like, this is the norm for them for the last 10 years. The reason why the rest of us couldn't have that is because those doctors have to charge like $10,000 like a month sometimes, or like, $50,000 a year to give that kind of service. And it's an incredible way to get care. And we know it works because the celebrities choose to do it. They don't choose to go to a clinic. They don't choose to go to a hospital. They choose to message their personal doctors, but it's too expensive. And so then that question becomes, how do we use technology to replicate this care model, but make it more scalable so that doctors are happy to charge a fraction of the price? And that is the way that we can bring this care model to billions of people around the world. And so what we do with Future Clinic is, when you send a message as a patient, every doctor has their own AI assistant. That AI assistant is trained for that doctor's specialty. And then crucially, over time, it learns more and more about what that doctor thinks, what questions that doctor cares about, how they like to practice. And so I always use the example of like a chief resident to doctors. It's like your best ever chief resident is now in the chat with you. Yeah. And when a patient sends a message, no matter what it is, if it's a new problem, if it's a refill request, rather than that coming directly to you so that you have to reply to potentially hundreds or thousands of patients every single message, your AI assistant steps in and asks some follow-up questions. It does not deliver care recommendations. It won't even recommend you a skincare product. Like, it won't do anything. We keep the AI completely away from the actual practice of medicine. Unlike a lot of companies who I think are going really far in the other direction and saying, we have AI doctors now that can do the whole thing. I don't believe that it's safe to do that right now. And I'm very close to this technology. So I think I speak from a place of good experience there.
Yeah.
In our case, the AI assistant asks a bunch of follow-up questions that will be relevant and speed up the process for the doctor. And then the great thing for the patient is they can also just like pause the conversation and go off and finish what else they're doing in life and come back, and the AI assistant's waiting for them. They have infinite patience, right? They're never going to try and rush you. You can take all the time in the world to give a really thorough history. Then the AI assistant will just pass on the entire case to your doctor. And it will always go to your human doctor, the one that you've chosen. There's no kind of like, obfuscating here. It's not someone pretending to be the doctor and really it's someone else. It's like, if you sign up to Dr. Syde, you're going to get Dr. Syde. If you sign up to Dr. Portela, it's going to come to Dr. Portela. And so in that way, as a doctor, when it comes to you, you've saved like 10, 15 minutes of time where you would have asked those same questions to gather all that information. Now it's come to you. And then as a doctor, in that style, you can reply all through chat. And we have this concept called a human signature, which also is so core to our thesis of like, how do we keep this relationship feeling human and intimate, where your doctor can record a video or audio snippet live inside the electronic health record when they're replying to you. And it can only be recorded live. So you can't upload a file, like 100 people get the same file. Yeah. It's like, it can only be recorded live. You can't use AI software for it. And that way you can see that it really is the human doctor. This isn't AI pretending. And over time, as I've spoken to my patients, they've said like, wow, this makes such a huge difference for me, because it really, now I have that peace of mind that it really is you, that I can trust the outputs of this. And so that's how we've chosen to approach it right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice touch. I remember back in the early days of COVID when I did not want to do telehealth in my practice, but it became a necessity in the early days of COVID. And we brought a platform on to the practice that we were subscribed to. And I can remember doing consultations where somebody's walking around in the background on the video who are not properly clothed. I had patients who were on like an iPhone 7 in the Walmart parking lot in their car. They're trying to show me a rash and shift clothes around. And it just was not an effective way to deliver care. And it is exhausting to sit there on video call after video call. And I have found in using Future Clinic that it's more personal, that I feel more connected to the patient than if I was trying to do a cumbersome video call. And I love the element of the human signature, that I can record a video and I think about what I want to say. And I want to make sure that the patient knows I genuinely care about this interaction and that you get the result that you're looking for. And it's very similar to when a new patient comes into my clinic, they go in the room with my medical assistant who takes their history, who asks them the questions that they know that I'm going to ask. And then they come out and say, Dr. Portela, we have a new patient. They're coming in for acne. They've tried benzoyl peroxide over the counter, and they used to have some doxycycline from their primary care provider, and they're just not seeing results. And then I'll go in and I already know what I want to do. And I'll look at the patient. In the case of Future Clinic, I get all that information. I look at photos and I'm able to formulate a plan that I know is going to work for the patient. And so the hybridization of the platform to remain human, but also implement the technological tools that are so good at data gathering, I think delivers care in a really efficient manner.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to your point, that's what's really important is just we're constantly trying to search for that balance of how do we use the best of modern technology, but keep healthcare human. And the reason why I care so much about keeping healthcare human is again, part of that like concept that, oh, every doctor is interchangeable. Anyone who's been a doctor and who knows other doctors knows that's not true, because like in my residency program, where say there's like 26 of us who have all been taught the same thing by the same people, you will get 26 very different dermatologists coming out of the other end of that program. And that's because we have accrued experiences, we have different baseline personalities. In healthcare, it really isn't as algorithmic and robotic as people like to think. Like we have these things called guidelines. And so the kind of simple approach is, oh, well, it's a guideline. Everyone's going to say X, Y, Z. And then you speak to any dermatologist or doctor and you say, how often do you stick exactly to what's in the guidelines in that order? And they'll tell you almost never. I mean, they're not even called rules, right? They're called guidelines. It's supposed to just be kind of like take inspiration from this as a general rule of what works. But you have to personalize that to each patient you're speaking to. And different doctors have different philosophies, right? And this is the other thing where for me, part of the question we get asked a lot is like, well, why don't you just have like the AI be the star of the show, right? Like it's the AI that people come for. And then there's who cares about who the doctor is on the back? They just can like press approve and make sure it's safe. And I push back against that, because what I say is there is not one correct philosophy on healthcare. And people should have that choice to be able to find a doctor who they resonate with. Because I, for example, I'm like a no-nonsense dermatologist. Like even in anyone's watched my YouTube, my Instagram, whatever, they know I'm very cynical about the skincare world. They know that I like to call out BS like way more aggressively than a lot of other derms. And some people love that, right? And some people are like, this is the kind of person I want to speak to. And then some people hear that and they say, well, no, like I enjoy skincare. I like someone who's more open-minded. And I say, that's amazing. You should go get care from one of the dermatologists who are genuinely passionate about that. And this is true to how they care about healthcare. And so I think that's what's so important, is that all of our AI and infrastructure tooling is designed to help amplify a doctor's style of practicing medicine, because they will be dramatically different. And so if you sign up to like 10 different doctors on Future Clinic, you will never feel like this is a generic AI and then there's a different doctor's name and face at the back. You will feel like, oh, wow, this doctor who I'm speaking to, they care a lot about holistic medicine. They care a lot about the diet and its impact on skincare. This other doctor I speak to cares a lot about cutting edge cosmetics, and they love Korean beauty. And I like also have a part of me that resonates with that. And so that's what matters a lot to me, is like these should all be amplifiers of the baseline human doctor. And we have to keep healthcare human. Otherwise, we're going to really regret it, because we'll accelerate towards this like single monolithic AI doctor entity. And people will not be happy, because they'll say, well, no, I actually kind of want a different style of healthcare. And the mega AI will tell you, no, that is not the approved style of healthcare. There is only one way to do this. And that's not the future we want.
Yeah. Let alone the monolithic AI taking over. There are now some states who are starting to allow AI to prescribe medication. And as somebody who works in the tech development space, who works and intimately knows AI, what do you see as the biggest pitfalls from letting AI prescribe and removing the human element between care delivery?
Yeah, I think the one that got a lot of headlines recently was like the Doctronic in Utah case, right? Where they said that AI is going to be allowed to prescribe. I'll say about that, when you scratch the surface and look under what they actually are implementing, it is a pretty tightly controlled, like almost like a decision tree, right? Like, okay, you've been given this type of like inhaler. You've had no problems with this inhaler, right? And they say, no, I've had no problems with this inhaler. I've been on it for 6 years. I just need a refill. And they say, okay. And then even then when the AI says, okay, there's a human doctor who's reviewing the cases in the background in case something goes wrong. So I think a lot of that was kind of like clickbait headline, like, hey, look what we have AI doing its own, prescribing. So I'd say in that case, it's actually relatively safe. But the idea right now of an AI truly being able to deliver healthcare autonomously, it's a really bad idea. And part of the reason it's a bad idea is not because the AI models don't know the medical knowledge. I actually believe that the cutting edge AI models like, Opus 4.6 or the latest OpenAI models, they know more medical knowledge than any doctor in the world currently knows or ever will know. They already have that inside them. The problem is part of the job that we do as doctors is we elicit information from patients in a correct way that basically knows what is real signal and then knows what may be noise or maybe something that was casually phrased or maybe not, a patient might have, as a throwaway comment, said like, oh, it's like, it's killing me that it does this or whatever. And we understand that these are the ways humans communicate. And we're really good at curating the history from a patient, taking that history, sanity checking it, and then making sure that we can use that to inform a treatment and response. And we know when it's a good idea to break the rules or change the order of what a guideline might typically recommend. And we can make those kind of judgments because we have that agency. An AI model has to always be coded with a specific philosophy on what they are or aren't allowed to do. There must be hard rules. And the second you introduce really hard rules in healthcare, you get bad outcomes, because then you get either just over investigation or over prescribing of things, or again, a lack of variety in practice. And the last thing is they're very easy to steer right now, these AI models. Like anyone else who's tried speaking to them, you'll tell them about an idea you have for something and it'll say, that's an incredible idea. That's the best idea I've ever heard. Like, you should definitely do that idea. Like, throw your life savings into it. And then you'll say, wait, but tell me why it might not be a good idea. And they'll say, no, it's actually a terrible idea. Here's 10 reasons why it's terrible. and then you kind of step back and you're like, wait a minute. And for anyone who hasn't done that, I think it can be a pretty shocking experience. Now, if you combine that with healthcare, we know, like, how often as a doctor does a patient come in saying, like, here's what I think is going on. Like, it's definitely this. I read about it online. And we have to, like, sensitively, like, understand why they think that's what's going on. Sometimes agree with them, sometimes push back and say, actually, I really don't think that's what's right for you, because I think that's a bad idea. The AIs are not going to be happy to do that for a very long time. And this is like deeply ingrained in how they're trained, is they pander to people. They make them feel good. They make them feel smart. That's why they're so popular, right? No, a billion people would not be using it if these AI models did not make us all feel like we're super smart, great people.
Right.
And that's great in a lot of ways, but you just need that human doctor there to be able to stop it when it's going into bad territories that are going to lead to bad outcomes.
Yeah, I can think of the number of times I've sat with a patient who has delusions of parasitosis, who is convinced they have a parasite crawling out of their hair follicles. And I never thought that an AI might just completely validate that and continue to prescribe inappropriate therapy for a patient, when I can have a more nuanced conversation with the underlying issues that could be going on. And so I think that's really, really insightful. Your platform also really tackles this idea of doctor empowerment. We know that burnout among healthcare providers is a huge problem. And part of that is because we get treated like cogs in a wheel, that healthcare insurance companies and large private equity owned businesses think that we're interchangeable. And even if you're on some other telehealth platform where somebody does an intake and you're essentially just there to rubber stamp a prescription that needs a human to do it, I want to hear from you about the doctor empowerment that you've really tried to bring to Future Clinic.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I always start with anything we're doing in Future Clinic. It's helpful that I'm a doctor myself, right? This isn't some abstract concept where I'm trying to be a tech bro from Silicon Valley thinking about how I'm going to disrupt the world of healthcare and who cares what the doctors think. Like, I always start with all of these things thinking, as a doctor, would I want to do this? Like, is this something I would actually enjoy? Is this something that I would welcome? Or would I roll my eyes and think, here we go. Here's someone from like tech again trying to tell me how this is how healthcare should be. And so one of the big things for me was, as a doctor, I want to maintain my own agency and I want to feel ownership over what I'm doing on Future Clinic. I don't want this to be a telehealth platform where I sign up, I make some side hustle income by, like you said, just being like an auto approver for a bunch of tretinoins or a bunch of, like spironolactones or whatever it might be. Because for me, that is not what I came into this business to do, right? Like, I came in to be a doctor, to help people, to build relationships with them, to get to know them, to tailor a specific, treatment plan for them. So for me to just be reduced to someone who's a secondary act, like to an AI or to some kind of decision tree algorithm, and all I'm doing is pressing a button, will never be the kind of job that I want to do as a doctor. And it will never be good care, right? For all of these systems, I really appreciate what a lot of these telehealth systems are trying to do, which is like to make healthcare more accessible. And so they've done it in ways where they've shaved off all complexity or nuance or gray area. And what they make you do is they make you tick specific boxes. Like, I have this, I have this, I have this. They don't want to hear about the rest of it. They don't want to hear about how exactly it's impacting your day-to-day, what your diet looks like, what your exercise looks like, whether you were better 6 weeks ago and suddenly this just got worse, which requires a whole different approach to if you've had this for 7 years or not. They don't care. They want you to tick a box and fit neatly into an algorithm so they can send you their compounded combination of, whatever ingredients it might be. And that has a role to play, but it's not healthcare. I don't call that healthcare. I call that just like, decision tree matching, or like it's like a pharmacy business that is tied to a doctor, right? It's not healthcare. Real healthcare is messy. It has 1,000 shades of gray, and it fundamentally needs this human component. And so on Future Clinic as well, we want the doctors to understand that we are building a platform. You're not working for Future Clinic. When you sign up as a doctor on Future Clinic, no one's there as your boss telling you, now there's 20 patients on your list for today. Like, we expect you to complete this many so that you can hit this bonus. We're not interested in that. Like, we're giving you this like digital clinical real estate basically to say, hey, I'm going to build my own business on top of this. I'm going to really invest in this. I have a link that takes people directly to me. We're not asking people to serve Future Clinic as a generic entity. We're asking you to go out and find patients who resonate with you, who will subscribe to you. You'll set your own prices as a doctor. You set your own patient limits, because some people might want to do this for just 50 to 100 patients as like a side income. Some people might decide, I want this to be my full-time practice as a doctor. I want to work flexibly from anywhere in the world. I want to spend more time with my kids. And so I want to be a full-time doctor on Future Clinic. And we'll say, amazing. You can go off and build your own kind of patients for this. We will build referral systems to you in case you need help building up your patient panel. But ultimately, it will always be between you and the patient, and you will be in control. And I think, I had no interest in like the things I complain about so much, which are private equity owning all of healthcare, and big academic institutions owning all of healthcare. I had no interest in now having a VC tech company that now tries to own all of healthcare and now forces every doctor to work under us. That's not what I want to be. I want to give doctors the infrastructure to go off and take back that ownership in their careers and build something that they feel really proud of, because most of us no longer own our clinics, right? We've lost that feeling that the previous generation of doctors loved so much, right? Like that was what made us so happy and satisfied as doctors. Is it was our business, it was our clinic. We controlled our schedules, we controlled our PTO. We were able to push back when someone double booked us or triple booked us. Now doctors have lost all of that, and then people are surprised why 50% of us want to quit our jobs in the next 5 years. I'm like, there's a reason for that. And so hopefully we can help people build that off ramp, right? Like they know that whatever else is happening on in their current jobs, they've got their Future Clinic, and their Future Clinic is getting bigger and bigger every month. And then now they feel empowered to say to their existing bosses, you know what, I actually don't want to work in an environment like this if this is how you guys are going to treat me. So that's the dream for us.
Yeah. I can recall last year I was approached by a pharmacy actually who wanted me to develop an online telehealth platform. I would be the face of it. They would fulfill all of the prescriptions. And then I would contract with one company to build out the tech platform, contract with another company who would be using people who were licensed in states, a lot of them nurse practitioners, some of them doctors, not even necessarily dermatologists, who would be there for a patient to go through the algorithm, click the buttons, and then get prescribed tretinoin by somebody who wasn't me. But I would have to be the face of this platform. But I'm not actually involved with making any of the care decisions. And I just did not feel comfortable with that. I felt like this was a farce where I'm just using my name to market to my followers, to get them to purchase something that I'll then get a cut of, but I don't actually get to be their doctor. And I just wasn't comfortable with it. And I've seen other dermatologists now launch this, and I don't fault them if they feel like they're comfortable with that. But when I learned about working with Future Clinic, it was directly in line. I don't want to get paid for a prescription. I want to have a relationship with a patient where they know that I care, because that's what I went into medicine for. And you've done that better than any platform. Teladoc, ZocDoc, insurance companies who want people to complete telehealth appointments with somebody that they've never met before. And it's empowering doctors. It's bringing autonomy back to patients to have a relationship with a physician. And just in my opinion, Future Clinic has really gotten everything right and continues to get better as a platform, month after month. So, props to you guys for doing this. I know it's not just you, you're the brains behind the operation, but you were able to partner with Y Combinator, which people may have heard. Why has Y Combinator been a great partner, and how did you get in with this firm?
Yeah, great question. So Y Combinator, for people who don't know, is an accelerator program in Silicon Valley. And it's seen as I guess, one of the most prestigious ones in Silicon Valley, if not the most prestigious, because the kind of companies that came through a Y Combinator are things like Stripe, Airbnb, DoorDash, Coinbase, like a lot of companies, you may have heard of, Instacart, things like that. And so what Y Combinator is famous for is basically trying to find people who they think have really impeccable technical talent, and people who are trying to tackle really big ideas. Like they're only interested in ideas that could be worth $100 billion one day. That's kind of the math of venture capital. Is if you go there and tell them why your company could make $50 million, they'll say, that's cute, but we're not interested. Like we only care if it's going to be a $100 billion company. And so myself and my co-founders, we went through Y Combinator just over a year ago now. And so it's actually a pretty simple application process in the sense that it takes you maybe a couple of days to put your case together for what you think you're going to achieve and why you think you're able to do it. The acceptance rate is very low, but you can also just reapply, for example. Like there's like 4 cohorts per year, so you can reapply. And so I'd encourage anyone who's kind of flirting with an idea in the technical world to go through a YC application, just because it's a really good exercise in kind of crystallizing what you think your value proposition is, what your business model would be, why this could be a huge idea. And so that was a great experience for us. And then at the end of Y Combinator, what also helps is kind of like if you go to Harvard or Stanford and you have that like quality assurance like label, in the venture capital world, when you're trying to fundraise and raise money to go off and build an ambitious company like this, it really helps when you can create a sense of like FOMO amongst investors, where they kind of panic and think, oh my God, this is going to be the next big thing. I have to put my money in. And so when you come out of Y Combinator as a YC company, it makes your job much easier when you're fundraising. So when we raised a year ago, we managed to raise like $5 million right out of the bat, even though myself and my co-founders, we were all first-time founders. Like none of us had gone off and built a giant company before, but because we had that momentum and the credibility that comes with YC, it made that process a lot easier as well. So it was phenomenal. And I think the thing which caught their eye was again, this concept that they like to see people who understand an industry deeply, and who they really believe could disrupt it, because they come from within it almost. And so in our case, myself and multiple of my co-founders, we were all doctors as well as software engineers. Like we had engineering backgrounds and we were medical doctors, which is a pretty rare combination. And we had multiple of our founding team who had that archetype. And so when they looked at us, they saw that when we talked about understanding the industry and how we could create something that doctors would love and patients would love, it meant that we had a lot more credibility when we said that. And the other thing was we guaranteed them, we said, listen, if we succeed and we are able to create a new care category where there's hospital medicine, there's outpatient medicine, and now there's personal doctors that you chat with, I truly believe this will become an entire category of healthcare. If we can define that category and you think about the size of the healthcare industry globally, this is going to be a gigantic company, right? If you guys believe that we're able to do this. And so I think that's why YC saw potential in us, and we were able to, raise our seed round after that. And it's been a wild journey, because it's a very different set of skills to being a doctor as, being a startup founder. But in a lot of ways, there's also the overlaps, right? Like we think about problems very analytically as doctors. We have to be able to communicate with people. We have to negotiate buy-in and be able to inspire people, whether it's people you're trying to hire as an engineer or whether it's people you're trying to fundraise from. And then I think just having that deep empathy for what real healthcare looks like. I just wish there were more builders from healthcare actually trying to go off and build tech companies, because I think part of the reason so many of these companies start off with a lot of like hype and then completely die off is because they don't have doctors as core parts of their team. They might hire someone as like, oh, he's our medical representative, or just kind of like a cursory advisor or something like that. But living and breathing this for the last like over a year, and day in and day out thinking about how many times I have to take a step back and think about from a doctor's perspective, like whether or not this is the right direction to be going down. I have no idea how you could do that if you're not actually deeply from healthcare yourself.
Right.
And so that's why, hopefully more doctor builders are going to be out there in the coming generation who are inspired to join.
Yeah. And for being a large private equity, group, they've really allowed you to develop this product in a way that still maintains that doctor empowerment, which I think is a rarity, but love that they have allowed you the autonomy to deliver the product that you dreamed of. And I'd like to know from you where this inspiration came from. You're a busy dermatologist. You could have a great career by just running your own clinic in New York. You've built up a following on social media. What was the inspiration? Was there a singular moment where you're like, I just have to do this. I can't get the idea out of my head anymore?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that because I've been obsessed with tech from like the very beginning, I think back to even when I was in like my second year of medical school, I spoke to my now wife at the time when we were getting to know each other, and I told her I'm going to do medical school in England, then I'm going to move to America and I'm going to do residency training because it's more like focused and like I think high quality. And then I want to go start a tech company and go through Y Combinator. and I told her this in like second year of medical school. And so I remind her of this sometimes now when she tells me, why would you leave the job of a dermatologist that you work so hard? And for context, I'm like an IMG, right? I'm an international medical graduate. So the idea that an IMG gets dermatology and then becomes a dermatologist and then decides to go off and do something else is I guess, a pretty alien concept for some people to understand. But for me, at least, I've been obsessed with this space for a long time. I've been obsessed with trying to make a difference at scale. I come from a family of doctors. My dad, my three older brothers, all of my uncles, everyone's a doctor. Like in my family, you become a doctor, then you decide what you want to do in life. That's like the rule. and so I always knew that I wanted to go in this direction. Now, the specific idea for Future Clinic really kind of crystallized after the ChatGPT moment. Like I was following a lot of OpenAI's developments, and then after ChatGPT, I knew the world had changed very quickly after that point. And as soon as I started playing around with these tools, this like pipe dream that I'd always had of like, wouldn't it be amazing if everyone could always just have personal doctors that they message? Like that concept had crossed my mind for many years, but it was always a pipe dream, right? It made no sense because like, how would the economics of this work when doctors are not going to let thousands of patients message them directly and charge a small amount of money? So when I saw what ChatGPT could do straight away, I thought, oh my God, like this is now no longer a pipe dream. This is a like product roadmap of how I could go from point A to point B here. This is actually possible. And once that thought entered my head, I couldn't think of anything beyond that. Like so I told my wife, I was like, listen, I know this is going to be like a 90% pay cut for us while I go through this whole journey. It's going to need a lot of patience. It's a super risky career move. But the idea that like I could be part of this like technology revolution, which I think is like a once in a millennia technology revolution, right? Like with AI coming along, the rules of everything are being rewritten. And I think doctors should be at the forefront of defining how that technology is going to disrupt our industry. So I knew I had to do it. So at that point, we just took the plunge and went all in. There's the excitement of the overall idea and what you want to pursue. And if anyone's watched movies like The Social Network or anything, it really does like make starting a startup seem really like sexy and exciting. The day-to-day realities of it are not as like exciting. It's more just like chewing a lot of glass as you go through each process, because as soon as you think you're ready to do something, a safety concern comes up, right? Like you start thinking about edge cases, like, well, what if a patient said this in chat, but then in their medical record, they said something else. And then you show the doctor things that are out of date. And now we have to go back to the drawing board to make sure we don't let that happen. And so there's like 1,000 of these things along the way. But I'm just super motivated by this overall vision. And we have a very global outlook for what Future Clinic can be, because I think this fundamental model of having a local doctor, having a local patient who chooses that doctor that they want care from, and then having like a Wi-Fi connection and a mobile device. Like you can see how that fundamental unit of healthcare is something that you can actually very easily translate to any part of the world. And so that vision is for me so energizing that I consider this to be my life's work, and I intend to be working on this for like decades and decades to come. And so that's like a real privilege to be able to work on something that you're truly passionate about. And so I don't take that for granted either, even though it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, I certainly want, people to go and check this out. And in the podcast show notes, we'll have links to your Future Clinic and my Future Clinic. But I want people to understand this is not a dermatology specific platform. Although we happen to be dermatologists, we want people to know you can develop a personal relationship with physicians in many different specialties, because there's so many things in medicine that can be addressed through chat-based healthcare delivery. Obviously, if you need a X-ray done, you need a CAT scan, you need a blood draw, you're going to have to go and personally interface with the healthcare system. But I would love for you to tell us what other specialties are on the platform, and how can consumers who will be patients find some of these other specialties if they want a longevity physician, if they want somebody to help with hormone management or weight loss, or whatever they happen to be interested in finding a solution for. How can they find the doctors that are on Future Clinic to deliver that care?
Great question. And yeah, exactly. We're not dermatology specific. We started with that because I happen to be a dermatologist. So I was the first doctor on the platform, and I've been using the platform myself now. I think I've done over 400 appointments on there, even though we launched just a couple of months ago. So that's been really, really exciting to be able to be a user of the product that I'm working on too. But it's not dermatology specific. Like right now we have cardiologists, we have GI doctors on there, we have pediatricians who are not yet live because we're working on this pediatric consent flow, but they're signed up and ready to go as soon as that comes in place. We even have orthopedic surgeons on there, we have longevity doctors, we have OBGYNs, allergy doctors, ENTs. Like I've been surprised myself with the variety of doctors who've been excited to get involved in this kind of care model. And I think what's a really helpful exercise is often when people think about chat-based care, the first thing that comes to their mind is they're like, oh, well, I can't do an injection over chat-based care. And I say, I totally agree. You can't do an injection over chat-based care. But what's a more useful exercise is when you take a step back and say, okay, what could I do in terms of healthcare? If I could get a unrushed, detailed history from a patient, if I could look at their photos and videos, if I could access all of their external medical records, which is our system is going to enable you to do, and if I could order them blood work and imaging, because those are the other two things coming to Future Clinic in the next couple of weeks, is your doctor on Future Clinic will be able to order you blood work, and you'll be able to go to a Quest or a LabCorp, or even pay a bit extra and have someone come to your house and draw your labs for you. When we're integrating the ability to order imaging, so you can again go to an imaging center of any local one that a regular doctor could send you to. Your Future Clinic doctor can also order you imaging to go to any of those imaging centers, and those results will come back to that same doctor. And so when you think about it from that perspective, and then you ask, okay, how much of healthcare could you do? Like, could you replace? If we take outpatient medicine, so let's avoid the hospital for a second. There are 1 billion outpatient appointments that happen every year in the US alone, 1 billion. And out of that, as I've done the calculations on this, because clearly I'm motivated to figure this out, I would estimate that 75 to 80% of those appointments can be done through chat-based care. And that sounds staggering when you think about it, but I encourage doctors and patients to go through this exercise. Next time you go to see a doctor, when you leave, ask yourself, could that have been a Future Clinic like appointment? Like when I really think about it. And when you go through it, I think people will be stunned by how much you're able to do. And I think you start to realize that the reason why we haven't pushed this kind of care model further is because the existing system does not incentivize for it, right? Like the insurance companies pay you $300, $400 for a patient who comes to your clinic in person. They don't reimburse chat-based care at all. And that's why we're cash pay only on Future Clinic, because they don't even offer that as a care option. And so in that kind of world, you can understand why most of healthcare is incentivized to tell you, especially the private equity owners of all these healthcare institutions, they're incentivized to tell you, no, you must be there in person. You must be there in person. When you take a step back and say, well why? Like, if I could speak to that doctor and they have access to all of this, do I really need to be in person? I think people will be amazed in the coming 5 to 10 years when they realize how much of healthcare can be done in this format. And I think it's only heading in one direction, right? Even people who are skeptical of this kind of care model, when I tell them that there's hundreds of millions of conversations with ChatGPT every single day about healthcare. People are already going to chat-based systems for their care. They're just not going to a doctor. They're just going to an AI by itself, which is dangerous and has poorer outcomes. I think in the coming 5 to 10 years, we will see this care model emerge dramatically. And I think people will be impressed and surprised by how much they can get done. And I hope that doctors don't see this as a threat, because for doctors, what I say to them is, you will have better life if you're able to build your own Future Clinic and take back ownership. Now, the private equity owners and the big academic institutions, they will see this care model as a threat, and I expect them to try and put up a lot of barriers and friction and fearmonger about this kind of model. But that's just to be expected, right? Their business model is based on not allowing a company like Future Clinic to succeed. And then to your last question, Dustin, about how can people find the different kind of doctors. Right now on futureclinic.com, we've made it such that you can go to the homepage and it's more targeted towards doctors, where we tell them like sign up and launch your own Future Clinic. In the next 4 to 6 weeks, futureclinic.com will completely change so that it's a patient destination. So when you arrive at futureclinic.com, you'll be able to start talking about a healthcare problem you have, and we can then recommend you which doctor is the best fit for you, or you'll be able to browse to find which kind of doctors are available, what kind of services do they offer, what kind of states do they cover. And so you'll be able to put in your details and be able to browse who's available. And I hope by then we will have hundreds and maybe even thousands of doctors at the rate that we're currently growing, so that people have a really deep sense of choice and they can really feel that control in their own healthcare.
Yeah, that's really phenomenal. And by the time this episode launches, that'll be very close around the corner. So if you are looking for a more personal relationship with your doctor, or there's somebody that you follow online and they're on Future Clinic, you can actually allow them to become your doctor. You can choose them, and we would love that. I know that you've enjoyed that transition into chat-based care. It's been wonderful for me to meet new people through chat-based care and actually deliver them a message. And if your doctor's not on Future Clinic, you can tell them about it and encourage them to sign up. There's no cost for your doctor to sign up for Future Clinic. And we want to help improve healthcare delivery. Just like, Dr. Syde, I've seen so many problems arising in the healthcare space due to, conflicts of interest and people competing for the dollars in healthcare. And I think this really resets things to a way that medicine really is supposed to be. So appreciate you sharing the platform and helping to spread the word about this. And we'll have links to your Future Clinic and my Future Clinic in the podcast show notes, and just encourage patients to go and get the care that you deserve with a personal touch.
Amazing. I really appreciate the conversation, Dr. Portela. And again, if anyone has any ideas, if you're a doctor and you have questions about the platform or ideas for how we can make it better or ways we can improve it, please send me a DM. Like maybe we can put my Instagram handle below, my email below, whatever it is. I'm so excited to have conversations with other kinds of doctors because even though I think the platform right now is incredible, it's also the worst it will ever be, right? I always remind me of this. This is the worst we'll ever be. We are going to get better and better every month. And part of that is speaking to doctors from other specialties and understanding how we can make it even better for their specialty and how we can make healthcare more accessible, because I know this is something you're really passionate about as well. And for me, that is the North Star, right? How do we bring ourselves to a world where 8 billion people around the world can have personal doctors the same way billionaires and celebrities do now? We know that that's the best you can get because that's what those people have chosen. Yep. How do we make that accessible for everyone else? And that's hopefully what we're going to be spending many decades building.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, Dr. Syde, and to our listeners, thank you. And please share this episode with somebody if you have found it helpful. Check out the links in the podcast show notes or the YouTube video description to learn more about Future Clinic. Leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next episode.